Assalamualaikum. Today we are going to present about the democracy and authoritarianism in Malaysia. Before we start, let me introduce my group member. The first presenter is me, Mariyatul Qibtiah Binti Armizan. Second is Nurul Shazirah Binti Azlan. Third is Alyaa Batrisyia Binti Azman. The fourth is Syafiqah Naqibah Binti Azman, and the fifth is Nurul Aziemah Binti Ibrahim. Democracy is a system in which parties lose elections. However, the ruling coalition led by the United Nations Organization has been securely in power since the country gained independence in 1957. By 2008, the government held an average of 80% of the seats in parliament and allowed it to amend the constitution at will. Although this is an example of special national unity for a variety of reasons, including election techniques, these all indicate other reasons. Likewise, the country doesn't respect important political principles and human rights, such as freedom of speech and assembly or the right to be detained solely on orders of independent court. In addition, the image of racial harmony frustrated other races to some extent. In a country that implements large-scale active policies to benefit them, Malaysia enjoyed a special status under the Constitution. Since at least the early 1970s, Malaysia's political power has been in the hand of Malaysia. Democratic establishments are certainly considered because the main manner of acquiring and work out political authority, elections are often held, and their victors anticipate energy and rule of acquiring and work out political authority. Elections are often held and their victors anticipate energy and rule. Although this reasoning appears to be common at the least through part of the voters and for that reason unable to show the legitimacy of the regime, there seems to be no proof that it would be preserved its survival through itself. Although this is often thought as the reason why the ruling Barisan Nasional coalition should continue to govern, it is not clear why the other coalition is bound to get worse, or why it doesn't want to switch to more open politics. However, from the perspective of the current ruling elites who have ruled Malaysia for more than 15 years, this transition is very undesirable. At the same time, the regime can provide incentive to its supporters in the form of positive action, government contract and sponsorship. In addition, as Harold Crouch pointed out, the UMNO-led regime is easy to take repressive measures in 1996, and the government is careful not to deviate from the majority vote, especially the number of votes in the Malaysian part. Not far population, regular elections are not means of electing a ruler. It provides a valuable feedback mechanism for the regime because the role of the opposition is like a court, which operates without laying the foundation for the government. The power of the elite is threatened. In addition, the regime can justify its authoritarian measures by emphasizing its irreplaceable role in maintaining national unity and security in Malaysia's difficult situation.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Batrisyia Binti Azman. I will continue for the next slide. Democracy in Malaysia. So the first one is representative system. Representative democracy is a system of government in which citizens elect their representative to run the government on their behalf. The people elect officials to create and vote on laws, policy, and other matters of government in their behalf. In this manner, representative democracy is the opposite of direct democracy, in which the people themselves vote on every law or policy considered at every level of government. Ordinary citizens do not make governmental decisions themselves but by elected public officials. Elected representatives act on behalf of voters, and free competitive election all or most level of government as a symbol of the sovereignty of the people. Malaysia also use a representative democracy system in their country. This can see election as an efficient and effective way of organizing political succession. The electoral system is important because of its effect on national policy. This can be seen with Malaysia will hold election for every 4 years. These elections are conducted is aimed at determining the Prime Minister and political parties qualified to govern the country. Citizens aged 18 and above must vote to fulfill their responsibilities as citizens. The future of the people is in the hands of the people, because if they vote for a political party that is indeed deserving, the welfare of the people and the prosperity of the country will be guaranteed. While if the people vote for the wrong party, they will suffer in the future because of the attitude of the leaders who do not carry out their duties. Next, parliamentary system. A parliamentary system can be defined as a representative system that features fusion rather than separation of executive and legislative institutions and powers. Citizens in Malaysia not vote directly for a chief executive. They vote for legislative representative or members of the parliament who are organized into one or more political parties. The chief executive is prime minister. He or she elected the other minister of government who constitute the cabinet. Each cabinet minister is responsible for administering a particular department of government, which are education, labor, foreign affairs, justice, defense, treasury, and so on. The cabinet as a whole referred to as the government is voted into or out of executive office by a majority of the parliament. Malaysia is a parliamentary democracy. There are 13 states of 3 federal territories. Malaysia is headed by the nominal paramount ruler and a bicameral parliament. 9 states have hereditary rulers, while the other 4 states, which are Malacca, Penang, Sabah, and Sarawak, have governors who are appointed by the Malaysian government. The power of state government are limited by the federal constitution under the term of federation. Sabah and Sarawak retain constitution prerogative. For example, the right maintain their own immigration control. The head of the state is the paramount ruler or king, which is known as Yang di-Pertua Agong, and the head of government is the prime minister. That's all for me. I will pass the presentation for the next presenter.
Next, I will continue with authoritarian system in Malaysia. Authoritarian is a system of leadership in which the leader exercises ultimate dictator power over his followers or subjects and pursues his goals without seeking advice or guidance from them. The leader is the highest authority and there is no one is higher than him. As a result, he has an authority to judge anything under his command, therefore giving the power to judge everything under his leadership at his discretion. Authoritarian is one of the oldest forms of leadership, having been used for thousands of years by ancient civilization. Next, there are several characteristics that define the form of authoritarian leadership. One of the features is the leaders have an absolute power in running a country or organization. The result has an absolute power. The leader's decision is final and cannot be compromised. Thus, the decision-making process is straightforward because leaders no need an advice or counsel. Besides, Malaysia began to develop its own political identity after the British granted independence in 1957. Awareness of the importance of government politics began to trace patterns and behaviors local people. After doing some research, there are some researchers also have the same question by linking the practice of democracy in Malaysia with the authoritarian nature of the government. They describe the ruling regime as basing its rule on the concept of authoritarian populism, which combines coercion and bribery. This also pushes them to place Malaysia in the middle position between the spectrum of democracy and authoritarian. Lastly, in this era of globalization, the world community is witnessing the authoritarian political process that still exists in several countries, such as in China, North Korea, Vietnam, and even in Malaysia also. An example, in China, North Korea and Vietnam, their governments do not use an electoral system, and all public decisions and policies are ruled by a single party system. I think that's all from me. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
I will continue with the benefits of democracy. The first benefits of democracy is give a people a chance to become personally involved in a government, because democracy is under the control of people and their voice. People have right to give their own ideas about the improve the governments, and people also have right to choose the governments through elections. This system mostly being used in the country that have many parties politics. For example, in Malaysia, every 5 years we will hold an elections. The second benefits is people identify with their governments to create a stronger levels of patriotism. Allow people to fight with each other to support their parties to become the next government, which is a fight about the good things, and people in the country are mostly loyal and patriotic. In Malaysia, we have different ethnic, so sometimes during elections, they have their own parties to support based on their ethnic. For example, for Malaysia ethnic, mostly will support Barisan Nasional, which is PN, while Chinese ethnic maybe will support the Malaysian Chinese Associations, MCA, and Indian ethnic will support Malaysian Indian Justice Party, MIJP. The third benefits of democracy is it can transfer power smoothly while establishing legitimacy. These procedures, usually called as the candidate will give their manifesto, people will choose the candidate based on the manifesto that they made. If the candidate had won the elections, it's become possible to establish legitimacy for political candidate. When the leader in the democracy had changed, the checks and balance that the new leaders offer will become smooth when the power change hand. And the last benefits of democracy is it can grow fastest economicals than other forms of government. Have their own freedom to choose, for example, they have freedom to choose which school to send their child. For example, in Malaysia, we have many type of schools such as sekolah kebangsaan jenis or just sekolah kebangsaan. So parents have freedom to send their child to which schools that can give their child the best education. Also give many different employment opportunities and also the place to live, which this freedom make the people in the country will feel free to make their own decision to get a better life. Democracy system make it possible for everyone to stay focused during the task of work because use our own strength to finish the task. Benefits of democracy give many benefits towards citizens, governments, and also it can help the government to improve their services. I think that's all from me. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
I will continue with benefit authoritarian. As we know that authoritarian is a governance structure that provide the general population with strong, centralized control and limited political freedom. Any rights granted to individuals are secondary to the demands of the state at any particular time. The first benefit of authoritarian is it helps to save time during the decision-making process. Authoritarian regimes operate on a centralized structure in which decisions are decided by one person or legislative group because there are fewer phases involved in the process of drafting laws or allocating resources. This structure allows for speedier movement and implementation of ideas. These leaders do not need to consult with others in order to make choices, which is very important in emergency situations. Authoritarian regimes strive to eliminate much of the waste that can arise in other governing systems by abolishing much of the bureaucracy. Next, the benefit of authoritarian is it produces more consistent results. Authoritarian leaders establish a clear instruction for the government and society to follow, and then build a system to ensure that the processes are carried out appropriately. This leadership style operates through a clearly defined chain of command, resulting in effective data transfer that originates with the government's centralized organization. Although the quality of the output is dependent on the leader's experience, this strategy can produce outcome without personal expertise of a given work because governing officials have the authority to appoint someone into places. Other than that, it works to reduce economic inequality in society as a whole. In an authoritarian government, the only household which tend to see their wealth grow from their employment or action are those who hold high-level government position. There are many governments using for most parties even when private ownership exists. The result arises because of the purpose is to ensure that all parties have equal access to whatever they require in life. Lastly, it provides an increased productivity. This is all because of the novel strategy. Authoritarian administration can assist in property industry and agriculture industry to new heights. From the centralized processes of the government processes, it tries to provide a clear method for everyone to follow. Leaders can establish precise rules that swiftly trickle down to their subordinate, stating how to accomplish specific tasks according with the internal best practices that have been defined. The government then mandates through legislation that all parties follow this regulation or face fine or worse, which is rise output until fear of retaliation wear off. I think that's all from me. I will pass the presentation to the last presenter.
Based on this study of the democracy and authoritarianism system present in both countries, it is clearly showed that Malaysia is a resilient system. Even during the rule of Mahathir, who ushered in a stable phase of authoritarian rule, there were challenges to his authority in the form of his UMNO rivals, one of whom is currently the leader of the strongest opposition movement ever witnessed in Malaysia. For the first time in many years, the credibility and legitimacy of the UMNO-led government has been seriously affected. Najib oversees a ruling coalition that is a minority government by vast swath of the Malaysian public as it governs without popular mandate. As things currently stand, Malaysia's democratic transformation is far more likely to occur due to the emergence of a powerful protest movement, an economically mobilized middle class, and a more active civil society. Malaysia has been dubbed a principal challenger to any thesis that economic prosperity and democracy are inextricably linked. It has theoretically been able to portray itself as a defender of national unity and protection in the face of a dynamic internal and external environment. Malaysia's global condition has contributed to its credibility.